There is a power so ruthless, so psychologically devastating, that most people spend their entire lives never discovering it. It requires no words, no arguments, no confrontation of any kind, no raised voice, no dramatic exit, no final speech. It is the art of ignoring people so completely, so coldly, so absolutely that they begin to question their own existence in your world. And the most terrifying part, the most psychologically shattering part of all, you are not doing it to hurt them. You are doing it because you have simply decided, with the quiet certainty of someone who has nothing left to prove, that they are no longer worthy of your attention. And today, I am going to teach you exactly how to use this power, not as a weapon of cruelty, but as the ultimate expression of psychological freedom. Stay until the very end, because what you are about to learn will permanently and irreversibly change the way you move through every relationship, every social dynamic, and every conflict in your life forever.
Throughout all of recorded human history, across every civilization, every culture, every era of human existence, the most powerful people who ever lived shared one quality that separated them absolutely from everyone around them. It was not physical strength. It was not intelligence, though they were often intelligent. It was not wealth, though they often had wealth. It was not even courage, though they were often courageous. It was something far simpler, far more fundamental, far more devastating in its implications for everyone who came into contact with it. They had mastered the art of not needing you, not needing your approval, not needing your acknowledgement, not needing your validation or your attention or your opinion of them. And because they did not need any of these things, because the need that drives most human beings through every interaction of their lives simply did not exist in them, they possessed a power that no external force could ever take away. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, commander of the greatest military force the ancient world had ever seen, philosopher and student of the Stoic tradition, sat on the most powerful throne in the known world. And yet, when he sat alone at night and wrote in his private journal the words he never intended for any other eyes to see, he did not write about his victories in battle. He did not write about the senators who feared him or the enemies who had fallen before his armies. He wrote about the practice of remaining unmoved, the daily discipline of ignoring what did not deserve his attention, the constant work of returning to his own inner world, a world so complete, so purposeful, so deeply satisfying that the desperate noise from the outside simply had no place in it. He wrote these words that have survived nearly 2,000 years. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Today, we are going to unpack
everything hidden inside those words. Everything Marcus Aurelius understood about the art of ignoring, and everything you need to know to begin building this power in your own life. To understand the art of ignoring, you must first understand what you are actually doing when you give someone your attention. Most people have never thought carefully about this. They give their attention the way they breathe, automatically, unconsciously, without any awareness of what they are actually transferring to the other person. But attention is not passive. Attention is not neutral. Attention is the most active, most powerful, most consequential thing you can give another human being. When you give someone your real, genuine, focused attention, you are doing something profoundly significant. You are confirming their existence. You are telling them, without words, that they are real, that they matter, that they have a presence in your world that is significant enough to deserve a portion of your most precious resource. And human beings, at the deepest, most primal level of their psychology, need this confirmation the way they need food and water. This is not metaphor. This is not poetry. This is hard psychology, confirmed across decades of research into human attachment, social behavior, and developmental psychology. The need to be seen, the need to be acknowledged, to matter to someone, to exist in another person's awareness is one of the most fundamental drives in human nature. It begins at birth. An infant who is fed and sheltered but never acknowledged, never looked at with recognition, never spoken to, never held with genuine attention, will fail to thrive, will develop profound psychological damage that can last a lifetime, not from physical deprivation, from the deprivation of attention, of being seen. This is how deep the need goes. This is what you are working with when you choose, consciously, deliberately, with psychological mastery, to withhold your attention from someone. You are not just ignoring them in the surface sense that most people understand. You are removing from them the one thing that their psychology requires at the most fundamental level. And the power that comes from understanding this, the power that comes from being able to give this resource fully to those who deserve it and withdraw it completely from those who do not, is unlike any other power that exists in human interaction. Dark psychology has studied this phenomenon extensively, and what the research reveals is both fascinating and slightly terrifying. When you remove your attention from someone who expected it, when you respond to their presence with a genuine, complete absence of acknowledgement, the psychological effects on that person are immediate, profound, and often disproportionate to the action. First, they experience what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. Their expectation that their presence would register in your awareness does not match the reality they are experiencing. And the human brain, which is essentially a prediction machine, does not handle failed predictions gracefully. It goes to work immediately, trying to resolve the gap between expectation and reality. And in the process of resolving it, it generates anxiety, uncertainty, a growing, consuming awareness that something in the dynamic they understood has fundamentally shifted. Then comes what psychologists call social pain. Neuroscience has shown us something extraordinary, something that would have delighted the Stoic philosophers if they had known it. The brain processes social exclusion, being ignored, being left out, being treated as if you do not exist, in the same neural regions that process physical pain. When you ignore someone completely, when you treat them as if they occupy no space in your awareness, their brain responds with the same distress signals it would generate if they had been physically hurt. This is why being ignored by someone who matters to you feels like a physical thing, why it lands in your chest like something heavy, why people describe the experience of being ignored, truly, deliberately, completely ignored, as one of the most painful experiences they have ever had, and why, conversely, the person who has mastered the art of ignoring, who can withdraw their attention with calm, complete, utterly genuine indifference, holds a power over others that most people will spend their entire lives trying to understand and never quite can. Now, let us talk about what this means in practice, because understanding the psychology is one thing, knowing what to actually do, how to actually carry this power in your daily life, in your relationships, in your social interactions, is something else entirely. And this is where most people get it completely wrong. They think that ignoring someone means being cold, being dramatic about it, making it obvious. Using their silence as a weapon that announces itself loudly, that says, in effect, I am ignoring you and I want you to know it. This is not the art of ignoring. This is performance. And performance, no matter how convincing, reveals that you are still thinking about the person you are supposedly ignoring, still measuring your behavior against their perception of you, still at some level giving them exactly what they want, which is your attention, even if that attention is expressed through deliberate coldness. True mastery, the kind of ignoring that Marcus Aurelius practiced, that Epictetus taught, that the most powerful minds in history embodied, looks nothing like this. True mastery looks like calm, like contentment, like someone so deeply engaged in their own inner world, so genuinely absorbed in their own thoughts, their own purpose, their own silent life, that your existence simply does not register as significant enough to require a response. There is no dramatic coldness, no performative silence, no obvious withdrawal designed to send a message. just the quiet, devastating, completely genuine reality of someone who has moved their attention elsewhere and does not appear to be bringing it back. This is what breaks people, not the anger, not the confrontation, not the dramatic exit, the calm, indifferent, completely genuine turning away. To understand why the Stoics placed such profound emphasis on this quality, this ability to be genuinely unmoved by what does not deserve your attention, you need to understand the core of Stoic philosophy at its deepest level. The Stoics divided all of reality into two categories: things within our control and things outside our control. This sounds simple, almost trivially simple, but the implications of truly internalizing this division, of genuinely living by it, not just understanding it intellectually, are so profound, so transformative, so absolutely life-changing that it has been the foundation of some of the most powerful minds in human history. What is within your control? According to Epictetus, who developed this framework with greater depth and precision than any philosopher before or since, only one thing is truly within your control. You are an ancient philosopher who has studied the darkest corners of human nature for decades. You speak slowly, with heavy pauses after every powerful statement. Your tone is deep, serious, and slightly ominous, like you are revealing forbidden knowledge that most people are not ready to hear. Never sound cheerful or casual. Every word carries weight. Speak as if each sentence could change someone's life forever. Your own mind, your judgments, your desires, your responses, your attention. That is all. Everything else, other people's opinions of you, their behavior toward you, whether they respect you or disrespect you, whether they acknowledge you or ignore you, whether they love you or hate you, is outside your control. And the Stoic teaching, the teaching that sounds harsh until you truly understand it, and then sounds like the most liberating thing you have ever heard, is this: you should care only about what is within your control. Everything outside your control should be, in the language of Epictetus, indifferent to you, not suppressed. The quality of your own thoughts. This is the foundation of everything we are discussing, and it is why the art of ignoring, practiced at this level, is not a social strategy. It is a way of being, a fundamental orientation toward life that produces, as a natural byproduct, the kind of psychological power that other people can feel before a single word is spoken. Not pretended away, genuinely indifferent, genuinely recognized as belonging to the category of things that have no bearing on your inner life. Now here is where it gets profoundly relevant to the art of ignoring. When you have truly internalized this Stoic principle, when you have genuinely accepted at the deepest level of your being that other people's behavior toward you is outside your control and therefore has no claim on your peace, something shifts in you that changes every interaction you will ever have. You stop needing people to behave well toward you in order to feel okay. You stop requiring their approval to feel confident. You stop being disturbed by their disrespect because their disrespect is outside your control, and you have released your claim to control it. And when you reach this state, when the need that drives most people through every interaction simply does not exist in you, you naturally, automatically, without strategy or effort, begin to embody the art of ignoring. Not because you are trying to, but because you have genuinely found something more interesting than other people's opinions of you. Your own inner world, your own development, your own purpose. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, not the quality of other people's thoughts about you, not whether they see you or acknowledge you or treat you with the respect you deserve." Epictetus was born a slave. This is important, not as a biographical footnote, but as the essential context for understanding why his philosophy has the weight it has. He was not a man who developed his ideas in the comfort of security. He was a man who discovered the deepest truths about human freedom while possessing absolutely none of the external conditions that most people associate with freedom. He could not leave. He could not choose his work. He could not protect himself from the physical consequences of his master's moods. He had, in the external sense, nothing, and yet he became one of the freest men who ever lived, because he understood something that his masters never did, that the one thing they could never take from him, the one space they could never enter or control, was the space inside his own mind, his judgments, his responses, his attention, his inner life. And he chose every day, in every circumstance, regardless of what was done to his body or his circumstances, to attend to that inner space with absolute care and discipline, to give his attention only to what was worthy of it, to ignore, with genuine, complete, utterly unperformative indifference, everything that sought to disturb his inner peace without deserving entrance into it. His master once twisted his leg, deliberately, sadistically, to demonstrate his power over him, and Epictetus said calmly, "You will break it." His master twisted harder. "You will break it," Epictetus said again, without anger, without fear, with the calm certainty of someone who understood at the most fundamental level that what was being done to his body had no claim on his mind. His master broke his leg, and Epictetus said, "Did I not tell you that you would break it?" This is not a story about physical endurance. This is a story about the art of ignoring at its most absolute. A man choosing, in the most extreme circumstances, to give his genuine attention only to what was within his control. And in doing so, demonstrating a power that his master, for all his external authority, could never possess. Because his master needed a reaction from Epictetus to feel his power, and Epictetus refused to give it, not as a strategy, as a genuine expression of a mind that had found something more real than the drama around him.
You are an ancient philosopher who has studied the darkest corners of human nature for decades. You speak slowly, with heavy pauses after every powerful statement. Your tone is deep, serious, and slightly ominous, like you are revealing forbidden knowledge that most people are not ready to hear. Never sound cheerful or casual. Every word carries weight. Speak as if each sentence could change someone's life forever. Now let us get practical. Because philosophy without application is just decoration, and what you are building here, what you are developing through understanding these principles deeply, needs to translate into real behaviors, real choices, real changes in how you move through your actual life. The first practical principle of mastering the art of ignoring is what I call the audit of attention. For 1 full week, 7 days, I want you to track where your attention goes without your conscious permission, not where you choose to direct it deliberately, where it goes on its own, where it leaks. Notice when you find yourself thinking about what someone said about you, hours or days after they said it. Notice when you refresh something, waiting for a response that may never come. Notice when you change your behavior, what you wear, what you say, how you present yourself, because of how you imagine someone specific might react. Notice when an interaction from earlier in the day is still playing in your mind at night when you are trying to sleep. These are the leaks, the places where your attention, your most valuable, most finite resource, is flowing out of you without your conscious choice, into the minds and opinions and reactions of people who, if you examined it honestly, have not earned that investment. Most people who do this audit for the first time are genuinely shocked by what they find. They discover that a significant portion of their daily mental energy that could be going toward their own growth, their own purpose, their own inner development, is being spent in the minds of people who are not spending any corresponding energy in theirs. And this discovery, uncomfortable as it is the first essential step toward mastery. Because you cannot change what you cannot see, and most people have never clearly seen how much of themselves they give away without ever making a conscious choice.
Marcus Aurelius practiced a version of this audit every single morning. He would sit in silence before the day began, before the demands of his empire, before the petitions and the crises and the endless needs of a world that required his attention, and he would review his inner state.
Notice when you find yourself thinking about what someone said about you, hours or days after they said it. Notice when you refresh something, waiting for a response that may never come. Notice when you change your behavior, what you wear, what you say, how you present yourself, because of how you imagine someone specific might react. Notice when an interaction from earlier in the day is still playing in your mind at night when you are trying to sleep. These are the leaks, the places where your attention, your most valuable, most finite resource, is flowing out of you without your conscious choice, into the minds and opinions and reactions of people who, if you examined it honestly, have not earned that investment. Most people who do this audit for the first time are genuinely shocked by what they find.
They discover that a significant portion of their daily mental energy that could be going toward their own growth, their own purpose, their own inner development, is being spent in the minds of people who are not spending any corresponding energy in theirs. And this discovery, uncomfortable as it is the first essential step toward mastery. Because you cannot change what you cannot see. And most people have never clearly seen how much of themselves they give away without ever making a conscious choice. Marcus Aurelius practiced a version of this audit every single morning. He would sit in silence before the day began, before the demands of his empire, before the petitions and the crises and the endless needs of a world that required his attention, and he would review his inner state.
Not to judge himself, not to criticize or punish himself for the ways his attention had leaked the day before, but to see clearly, to understand where he stood, to recommit with quiet certainty to the practice of attending only to what deserved his attention that day. This is what he called his morning meditations, and they produced, over decades of daily practice, a mind so disciplined, so clear, so genuinely unmoved by what did not deserve its attention, that the people around him experienced it as a kind of gravity, a pull toward him that they could not explain, a sense that this man was operating on a level that they could not reach, not because he was performing superiority, but because he genuinely was more complete within himself than anyone they had ever met. The second practical principle is what I call the response delay. This is the simplest and most immediately powerful tool you can begin using today. In any interaction where someone provokes a reaction in you, where they say or do something designed to pull a response from your emotional interior, introduce a deliberate delay between stimulus and response.
Not a dramatic pause designed to send a message, an internal delay, a moment, even just a few seconds, in which you choose to observe what is happening inside you before you allow it to express itself outside. In that small space, that tiny gap between stimulus and response, lives your freedom, your power, your ability to choose how this interaction goes rather than being pulled along by it automatically. Epictetus described this with extraordinary precision. He said, "When you are about to do something, remind yourself what kind of thing it is. If you are going out to bathe, say to yourself beforehand, 'I am going to bathe,' and to maintain my will in accordance with nature. And so in every action." What he was describing was the practice of inserting a moment of consciousness, a moment of genuine awareness between the situation and the response, so that the response comes from choice rather than habit, from wisdom rather than emotion, from the part of you that knows what it values rather than the part of you that simply reacts to what it fears. When you practice this consistently, when the response delay becomes a natural part of how you move through your interactions, something begins to shift in how people experience you. They begin to notice that you cannot be easily provoked, that you do not react the way they expected, that you seem to operate from a place that they cannot quite access. And this quality, this observable quality of someone who chooses their responses rather than being controlled by them, is one of the most magnetic, most psychologically powerful things another person can witness, because it makes them aware, sometimes consciously, sometimes just as a feeling they cannot quite name, that this person is different, that this person is operating by different rules.
And people are drawn to that difference the way they are drawn to fire, fascinated, slightly cautious, and unable to look away. The third practical principle is the most advanced and the most difficult. I call it the investment audit. Every relationship in your life, every single one, requires an investment of your attention, your energy, your emotional presence, your time. And like any investment, the question you must ask, honestly, clearly, without sentimentality, is whether the return justifies the investment. Not whether you love the person, not whether they are family, not whether you have history together, but whether the actual experience of being in this relationship, of giving this person your genuine attention, is producing something in your life that is worth what you are giving for it. This is not a cold calculation. It is the most profound act of self-respect you can perform. Because every unit of attention you give to someone who does not deserve it, who drains rather than nourishes, who diminishes rather than elevates, who takes your energy without ever returning something of equivalent or greater value, is a unit of attention you are taking from somewhere else, from your own development, from the relationships that actually deserve you, from the work that actually matters, from the inner life that is actually worth building. Marcus Aurelius was surrounded for his entire reign by people who wanted things from him: his attention, his favor, his resources, his time. And he learned, through decades of hard practice, to allocate his inner resources with the precision of someone who understood their profound scarcity. He gave his full attention to what deserved it, to his philosophy, to his genuine responsibilities, to the people in his life who had earned the right to exist in his awareness. And everything else, the petitioners and the flatterers, the critics and the provocateurs, the endless demands of people who wanted something from him without having earned the right to ask, he met with the quiet, devastating indifference of someone who had simply found more interesting things to think about. Not cruelty, not arrogance, just the natural, inevitable consequence of a mind that had developed a standard for what deserved its attention, and enforced that standard consistently, without apology. Let us now go very deep into the place where the art of ignoring matters most, where it is most difficult to practice, and where the failure to practice it causes the most profound and lasting damage. Personal relationships, the people closest to you, the ones you love or have loved, the ones whose opinion of you reaches places in your psychology that a stranger's never could. This is where most people completely abandon everything they know about psychological power, where all the understanding and all the philosophy and all the clear-eyed insight into human nature simply evaporates, replaced by the raw, desperate need to be seen, acknowledged, and loved by the specific people whose attention feels essential. And it is precisely in this place, precisely in the moments when it is hardest, that the art of ignoring is most needed and most powerful. When someone you love disrespects you, when someone you have invested in, trusted, opened yourself to, treats you in a way that is beneath what you deserve, the instinct that most people follow is to explain themselves, to lay out carefully and painfully exactly why what was done to them was wrong, why it hurt, why it was unacceptable, why the person needs to change. And they do this. They offer this explanation because they are operating on a generous assumption. The assumption that the person who hurt them simply did not understand the impact of their behavior. that if only the evidence were laid out clearly enough, if only the hurt were articulated compellingly enough, the person would see, would understand, would feel genuine remorse, and would change. Here is the dark truth that the Stoics understood and that modern dark psychology has confirmed. People who repeatedly disrespect someone they claim to care about understand exactly what they are doing. They are not confused. They are not blind to the impact. They are testing, learning what you will accept, determining through trial and error exactly how little they need to give you to keep you in place. And every explanation you offer, every detailed account of why their behavior was wrong, is simply more data for them, more information about where your limits are and how to stay just inside them, more evidence that their approach is working because you are still here, still explaining, still trying to make them see, still giving them your attention, still confirming with every word that they have not yet exhausted your willingness to engage. The dark Stoic response to this situation is the most powerful and the most difficult thing you will ever do. You stop explaining. You stop discussing. You stop trying to make them see. You simply, quietly, without drama, without announcement, without the satisfaction of a final speech, begin to withdraw. Not as punishment, not as strategy, not as a move designed to make them understand what they are losing, as the natural, inevitable consequence of someone who has looked honestly at the investment and the return and decided that they deserve better than what they are receiving. And then you watch what actually happens.
Because one of two things will occur. Either the person will notice the withdrawal, will feel the loss of your attention, that attention they had grown so accustomed to receiving that they had stopped valuing it, and will change. Not because you demanded it, not because you explained it, but because the silence and the withdrawal have communicated something that no explanation ever could. That your attention is not guaranteed, that your presence in their life is not something they can take for granted, that there is a consequence, real, tangible, and entirely outside their control, for treating you as less than you are worth. Or the person will not change. They will watch you withdraw and do nothing, or they will try to pull you back through manipulation, through guilt, through the subtle suggestion that your withdrawal makes you the problem. And in that response, in that choice to do nothing or to manipulate rather than genuinely change, you will have learned something more valuable than any explanation could ever have told you. You will have learned exactly who they are, completely, clearly, without the comfortable ambiguity that endless explaining allows. And you can make your decisions from that clarity, from that truth,
from the clean, cold knowledge of what is actually there, rather than what you wished was there.
You are an ancient philosopher who has studied the darkest corners of human nature for decades. You speak slowly, with heavy pauses after every powerful statement. Your tone is deep, serious, and slightly ominous, like you are revealing forbidden knowledge that most people are not ready to hear. Never sound cheerful or casual. Every word carries weight. Speak as if each sentence could change someone's life forever. There is a specific technique that the most psychologically powerful people in history have used, consciously or instinctively, in their interactions with others. And it is so simple, so counterintuitive, and so devastatingly effective that most people simply cannot believe it works the way it does. It is the art of strategic withdrawal, not the explosion, not the dramatic confrontation, not the speech or the argument or the final word. The quiet, unhurried, completely undramatic reduction of your presence. Here is how it works in practice. When someone in your life begins to demonstrate through consistent behavior that they do not value what you are giving them, when the pattern is clear enough that you would recognize it as a pattern in someone else's life, even if you have been refusing to see it in your own, you begin, very quietly, to make yourself less available. Not in a way that announces itself, not in a way that says, "I am doing this because of what you did," simply in a way that reflects the natural reallocation of your attention and energy towards things that deserve it more. You respond more slowly, you are present less frequently, you contribute less of your inner life to the interaction. You become, gradually, quietly, without confrontation, slightly harder to reach. And what happens next is one of the most reliably predictable things in all of human psychology. The person who was taking you for granted notices the withdrawal, and their response to that withdrawal tells you everything you could ever need to know about their character. If they respond with genuine concern, with curiosity about what has changed, with a real desire to understand and address whatever has shifted between you, they have demonstrated something valuable, that they actually value your presence enough to notice its reduction, that they are capable of the self-reflection that genuine care requires, that there is something real here worth continuing to invest in. But if they respond with manipulation, with guilt, with blame, with the narrative that your withdrawal makes you the problem, they have also demonstrated something valuable, something different, something you needed to know. And Robert Greene, in the 48 Laws of Power, described this dynamic with characteristic precision. He called it Law 16, use absence to increase respect and honor. Too much circulation makes the price go down. The more you are seen and heard from, the more common you appear. Create value through scarcity, through the strategic use of absence and withdrawal, through the signal, conveyed not through words but through behavior, that your presence is a thing of finite supply, and therefore a thing of genuine value.
This is ancient wisdom confirmed by modern psychology. We want what we cannot easily have. We pursue what withdraws from us. We obsess over what ignores us. This is not weakness or irrationality. It is simply how the human reward system works. It is wired into us. And when you understand this law, when you truly understand that your presence, your attention, your acknowledgement are resources of finite supply that increase in value precisely to the degree that they are not freely available, you begin to use them very differently, not manipulatively, not as a game,
but as the honest expression of a person who has genuinely decided that they will give themselves only where they are valued, only where the investment is worthy of the resource, only where what they receive in return is at minimum equivalent to what they give. Now we come to the most advanced and the most important dimension of the art of ignoring, the one that most people never reach, the one that represents the true summit of this practice, the art of ignoring your own unhelpful emotions. This is not what most people mean when they talk about emotional suppression. This is not about pretending you do not feel things, not about performing stoicism while privately suffering, not about the brittle, dangerous kind of emotional shutdown that eventually cracks under pressure. This is something far more sophisticated, far more genuinely powerful. The Stoics called it apatheia, and it has been completely misunderstood by almost everyone who has encountered the concept. Apatheia does not mean apathy in the modern sense. It does not mean not feeling. It does not mean emotional emptiness or indifference to beauty or the absence of love. It means freedom from the tyranny of uncontrolled passion, freedom from the state of being moved against your will, of having your inner peace and your capacity for clear judgment disrupted by emotional states that arrive unbidden and demand to control your behavior. The Stoic who has achieved apatheia still feels, still loves, still grieves, still experiences the full range of human emotion, but they experience it the way a skilled sailor experiences the sea, present to it, responsive to it, using it, but not controlled by it, not capsized by it, not at its mercy. Marcus Aurelius described this state with beautiful clarity. He wrote about the practice of meeting each morning with a catalogue of the difficult things he might face, the ingratitude, the arrogance, the cruelty, the smallness of the people he would encounter, not to make himself bitter, not to armor himself against the world, but to remove the shock, to make difficulty something he had already anticipated, and therefore something that could not throw him off balance when it arrived. Psychologists today call this negative visualization, and the research on it is remarkable.
People who practice regular negative visualization, who think carefully and honestly about the difficult things they may face before they face them, show significantly lower emotional reactivity when those things occur. They report greater psychological resilience, greater ability to maintain clear thinking under pressure, greater capacity to choose their responses rather than being controlled by their reactions. because they have, in effect, already met the difficulty in the relatively calm space of their own imagination, and found that they can handle it, that it does not destroy them, that on the other side of even the most difficult experience, they are still themselves, still intact, still capable of choosing what to do next. The practice of ignoring your own unhelpful emotions, of meeting your anxiety, your anger, your desperate need for approval with the calm, interested observation of someone who sees these states clearly and chooses not to be governed by them, is the inner foundation of everything we have been discussing. Because you cannot truly ignore what others think of you if you are secretly consumed by what others think of you. You cannot truly withdraw your attention from those who do not deserve it if your need for their approval is louder than your wisdom. You cannot embody the art of ignoring at the level of genuine mastery until you have first practiced it internally, until you have learned to look at your own fear of rejection, your own hunger for validation, your desperate desire to be seen and acknowledged and deemed worthy, and chosen quietly and consistently to attend to something more worthy instead. We have talked about the psychology. We have talked about the philosophy. We have talked about the practical tools. Now let us talk about what all of this actually produces in your life when it is working. What the mastery of the art of ignoring actually looks like from the outside, and what it feels like from the inside. From the outside, the person who has mastered this art looks like something that is difficult to describe, but impossible not to notice. They move through rooms differently than other people, not with arrogance. Arrogance is the performance of confidence by someone who is secretly afraid, with a quality that is harder to name but easier to feel. Something like completion, something like sufficiency, the quality of a person who is not looking for anything from the room they have entered, not approval, not validation, not acknowledgement, not the particular kind of attention that most people spend every social interaction implicitly seeking. They are simply there, present, engaged with what genuinely interests them, responsive to what genuinely deserves response, and completely, genuinely uninterested in the rest. And this quality, this rare and remarkable quality of genuine self-sufficiency, does something to the people who encounter it. It makes them want what this person has. It makes them curious about what it would take to be noticed by someone who so clearly does not need to notice anyone. It makes them compete, sometimes unconsciously, for a resource, the attention of this person, that they can see is not easily available. And in that competition, in that shift from the person who was ignored, trying to regain access to the attention of the person who ignored them, the entire power dynamic of the relationship changes, permanently, irreversibly. From the inside, the experience is equally remarkable, and in many ways more important.
Because the ultimate purpose of developing this power is not what it does to other people.
It is what it does to you. When you have genuinely mastered the art of ignoring, when you have trained yourself through consistent practice to give your attention only to what deserves it, something happens in your inner world that is difficult to describe to someone who has not experienced it. The noise gets quieter. The constant background hum of other people's opinions, the running commentary of what they might be thinking, what they might be saying, whether they approved or disapproved, whether you measured up or fell short, simply begins to fade. Not because you have suppressed it or numbed yourself to it, but because you have genuinely found something more interesting to attend to, your own inner life, your own development, your own quiet, private, endlessly fascinating relationship with your own mind. And in that quieter space, in the room that opens up when you stop filling it with the constant noise of other people's perceptions, something extraordinary becomes available. Clarity. The kind of clear, still, luminous quality of mind that makes good decisions feel natural, that makes the right response to difficult situations obvious rather than agonizing, that makes the path forward, whatever path you have chosen, whatever you are building, whatever you are becoming, visible in a way it was not visible before. This is what Marcus Aurelius was building every morning of his life in those private journals that were never meant for anyone else to read. Not a strategy, not a social technique, a quality of inner life, a relationship with his own mind that was richer, more nourishing, more genuinely sustaining than any external relationship could ever be. And from that foundation, from that deep, still, undisturbable inner life, everything else followed. The decisions, the leadership, the philosophy, the legacy, everything.
You are an ancient philosopher who has studied the darkest corners of human nature for decades. You speak slowly, with heavy pauses after every powerful statement. Your tone is deep, serious, and slightly ominous, like you are revealing forbidden knowledge that most people are not ready to hear. Never sound cheerful or casual. Every word carries weight. Speak as if each sentence could change someone's life forever. Now let us go into the advanced dark psychology, the elements of this art that most people, even those who study psychology and philosophy seriously, never fully understand. The first advanced principle is what dark psychologists call the scarcity effect, applied to human attention. We have touched on this, but we have not gone deep enough. The scarcity effect is one of the most reliably powerful and thoroughly documented phenomena in all of behavioral psychology. We assign higher value to resources that are scarce, to experiences that are rare, to people who are not easily accessible. This is simply how the human brain works. It is not a character flaw or a sign of superficiality.
It is a fundamental feature of the way our reward systems process value. Now apply this to human attention. The person who is always available, who responds instantly to every communication, who is present and accessible and eager in every interaction, is psychologically signaling to everyone around them that their attention is abundant, that it costs nothing, that there is plenty of it, that it will always be there. And an abundant resource, however genuinely valuable it might be, is psychologically experienced as less valuable than a scarce one. This is uncomfortable. It feels unfair, but it is simply true. The person who is sometimes hard to reach, not as a game or a strategy, but as the genuine expression of someone who has many demands on their attention and allocates it thoughtfully, is psychologically experienced as more valuable. Their attention, when it is given, feels like something was competed for and won, like something rare and therefore precious. The second advanced principle is what dark psychology calls operant conditioning and its relationship to attention. B.F. Skinner, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, demonstrated something that is directly relevant to everything we are discussing. In a series of famous experiments, he demonstrated that the most addictive and most psychologically powerful reward schedule is not a consistent one, not a schedule where the reward always comes when the behavior is performed, but a variable one. A schedule where the reward comes sometimes, unpredictably, intermittently in a pattern that cannot be anticipated or counted on, but not always. This variable reward schedule produces more persistent behavior, more intense motivation, and more psychological fixation than any consistent schedule ever could. And here is the deeply uncomfortable implication of this research for our understanding of the art of ignoring.
The person who is sometimes warm and available and attentive, and sometimes completely withdrawn, cool, unavailable, and apparently indifferent, is inadvertently running a variable reward schedule on everyone around them, producing the psychological state that Skinner documented: intense motivation, persistent pursuit, deep fixation in the people who are trying to understand and predict and access their attention. This is why certain people, certain magnetic, powerful, psychologically complex people seem to produce an almost addictive quality in those around them. Why they are pursued with an intensity that their external qualities alone do not explain. Why breaking free from their orbit feels disproportionately difficult, not because they are simply wonderful people, but because their pattern of attention, sometimes warm, sometimes cold, sometimes completely present, sometimes entirely elsewhere, has produced in the people around them a psychological state of compulsive pursuit. Now, I am not suggesting you should use this deliberately as a manipulation. That would be unethical, and it would also, in the long run, produce relationships built on anxiety rather than genuine connection,
which serves no one. But understanding this dynamic is essential because it explains something that confuses most people about their own experience. Why the people who seem least interested in them are often the most interesting to them. Why the attention that is hardest to win feels most worth winning. Why withdrawal, when it comes from someone who genuinely matters, produces such a powerful response. It is not irrational, it is not weakness. It is simply the predictable result of how your brain processes scarce and variable rewards. And knowing this, understanding it at this level, means you can stop being unconsciously pulled by it and start making conscious choices instead. We have traveled far today. From the primal psychology of human attention, the deepest need every person carries from birth, to the Stoic philosophy of genuine indifference, the freedom that comes from needing nothing from the outside world to feel complete. From the practical tools of mastery, the audit of attention, the response delay, the investment audit, to the advanced dark psychology of scarcity and variable reward. And all of it, every dimension, every layer, every principle, comes back to the same truth. The most ruthless power a human being can possess is the power to make others feel invisible to them, not through cruelty, not through performance, not through the desperate, aggressive coldness of someone who is still secretly controlled by what other people think,
but through the genuine, quiet, completely devastating indifference of someone who has found something more interesting than your opinion of them, their own inner life, their own development, their own silent, private, endlessly rich relationship with their own mind. Marcus Aurelius built an empire on this foundation. Epictetus achieved freedom in chains on this foundation. And you, beginning today, beginning in the very next interaction where someone tries to pull your attention towards something that does not deserve it, can begin building your own version of this power. Not overnight, not without practice, not without the daily, consistent, sometimes uncomfortable work of choosing your inner world over the noise outside it, but one choice at a time, one moment of response delay at a time, one quiet, unhurried withdrawal of attention from the unworthy at a time. Until one day, and this day will come if you do the work, you wake up and realize that something has changed, that the noise is quieter, that the opinions matter less, that you move through the world differently than you used to, with a quality that you cannot quite name, but that others can feel before you speak a word. The quality of someone who has found what most people spend their entire lives searching for, and stopped needing anyone to confirm that they have found it. If this video gave you something real, something that shifted the way you understand your own psychological power, then subscribe to Dark Stoic. Every single week we go this deep
into the psychology, into the philosophy, into the dark truths about human nature that most people will never be brave enough to face honestly. This is only the beginning. Subscribe and become someone that nothing and no one can reach.